test the
They have all kinds of good reasons to want to stay away from them. They would call themselves a G.
Yeah, because it just correlates the people who do well, most likely do well in school, but there's no sort of correlation between people who do bad saying they're going to do bad in graduate school. There's no data on that. It's just sort of like,
well,
It's because they don't get in.
yeah, did you hear what he said? Because that's exactly what Patrick said.
What did Patrick say?
Part of the problem is that there's no data on the problem with the prediction of graduate school. There's actually two problems. The problem with predicting graduate school performance from GRE is that most of the distribution doesn't get into graduate school. The other thing is that GPA variance is so constrained in graduate school because you basically, in terms of final grades and stuff that goes into GPAs, you don't get C's anymore. And people don't even get like that many B's and stuff. So it's like your graduate school GPAs and sort of the doctoral level, and actually most master's programs are all like 3 point and higher, and most of them are like between 3.5 and 4. So you don't have any, you have to have variance to have covariance. So if you don't have, the less variation you have, the less opportunity there is to have a correlation. And you're actually restricting it on both sides. Cause that's one of the things that happens at the educational level is that even in a society as open and loose as we are about education, with multiple universities at all levels, and lots of opportunities to make up for misspent youth. I wish I could tell you my daughter and I are profoundly grateful. Totally grateful. You still have some of the low end of the distribution being locked off as you go from probably even junior high to high school, but certainly like high school and college to graduate school and so forth. How many people you lose depends on discipline in school and stuff, but you're always cutting off some of the low end of the distribution. We tend to focus more on, as screeners, we like to say, what we're doing is we're picking the best and the brightest, which is, and I'm not saying that's not true, but from a numerical standpoint, some of the things that's happening, the low end is getting chopped off all the time, and so we need to think and what I meant by the crack about the GREs is, I mean, it's not a full intelligence test is one of the reasons that they stay away from it. But they also don't want to get embroiled in arguments about measuring intelligence and whether then schools are picking people based on innate intelligence and so forth. So it's kind of better all around to acknowledge up front that you're testing things like analytic geometry, trigonometry. It's probably a little bit more like achievement than like innate intelligence. But also, you just want to kind of avoid all that language and all that very loaded social debate for all the very good reasons that I was referring to a minute ago. Intelligence tests have been used in so many ways. You're just kind of buying yourself a certain margin of safety by saying it's achievement and intelligence. And part of this, what you're from a admissions committee point of view, one of the things that you're using standardized tests like that for is to try to get some metric that gives you a sense of how well are these people going to do, given that they given if they come from different schools with unknown differences in how grade points averages get calculated and whether they're top or medium or whatever. And that can fall out in all kinds of different ways. I mean, no different schools are selecting varying degrees at the beginning of the graduate education. Yeah.
My friend who used to be a tutor for the SAT said that, I can't verify this, but there was a study that showed that your SAT scores were more closely associated with your parents' socioeconomic status than like your intelligence. So,
Well, if you're,
So achievement, but which is also correlated to.
well, yeah, but intelligence is correlated with all of those things too. And has a pretty high genetic load. It's not by no means perfect, but there's very strong genetic load in intelligence too. So we get carryover from parents and children. And sort of education is a big part of how you're assigning socioeconomic status and the parents' education level and sort of predictors, and both will be tied up. Your parents will be tied up with their intelligence and probably yours, and also your education. So a fairly classic answer with different, actually specific elements of the two. There's two kinds of intelligence, crystallizing through or math and verbal, or performance and verbal, or something else and verbal. Five, we'll be talking, I'll show you some of Shy's figures in a minute. Another of the early factor analytic people in intelligence was Guilford, and Shy can pick up Guilford's primary mental abilities test and use that in his studies. And then there are a number of psychologists who just argue for many. And one of the popular ones lately, some versions of which I think are actually somewhat better than others, but the whole idea of emotional intelligence is another domain of intelligence. Certainly the people have argued for something like mechanical abilities being a specific kind of intelligence. It's different from most other things that you measure. Some people are interested in very precise intelligences, and so you want to know exactly how smart people are, how well can people memorize things, or how well can people do architecture, or how talented are people at music. Architecture and music tend not to use SAT and GRE scores because it turns out that really good architects and really good musicians tend to do really good on those kinds of tests. And you're interested in your skills in those fields, in your achievement abilities in the more general academic sense. There's probably a sort of athletic intelligence, dance intelligence, things like that. Argue back and forth about art and artistic abilities of different sorts. And there are other people that would argue that you should have dozens, maybe hundreds of intelligence measures. It doesn't make sense to look at the higher order factors that you really want to know about what's specific. And actually, in a sense, it's not a solvable question in the light of data, because in part, where you stop on the scale is partly a matter of your theoretical inclinations and where you stop doing factor analysis. Because you always start with lots of different specific questions and subtests. You organize those into some number of higher order factors, even across the stuff that you can see in Warner Shy's different ratings. You started with 5, but sometimes they're thrown in another 1 or 2, depending on whether they add memory as another factor. Sometimes they have processing speed as yet another factor, and so you can easily get 5 or 6. If you think that 5 or 6 is too many to fool around with, it's easy to get 2. And if you really like 1, you just keep on going. And you can get 1. Depends both on what you start with, an initial item pool and test pool, and how long you keep doing factor analysis, and how high up the chain of successive factor analysis you can go. So, at least when he started in the 70s, and I don't know if you know it, Warner used to be here at USC. He was the head of the. There was a time in the past when we actually had like a separate division of the